Hello and welcome to How to Start a Board Game Company from Off the Page Games. I'm Jay Cormier. Now this week I'm going to take a little different spin on things because I'm not going to focus on one thing. I'm going to kind of give you a sneak peek into what it's like to be a publisher, because you just have to be able to be good at juggling a lot of things at the same time. There are so many things going on right now. We're 5 weeks away from launching the Kickstarter that there's just so many balls in the air, and you just have to be good at keeping track of what's going on and make sure you're as ahead of the curve as possible. And sometimes I do not feel like I am ahead of the curve because there's just always more to do. So I'm going to give you a kind of a rundown very quickly of all the things I've been doing in the last week. Just this is the last week, that's what I've been doing. So I've been doing contests. My last video was all about running Gleam contests. I'm on my third contest now. I'm doing one contest a week, which maybe that was biting off more than I could chew. I'm not sure. But running the contest means continually blasting it out, communicating it, putting on different Facebook groups, tweeting it, all this kind of stuff to try to make sure you get as big of an audience as possible, aware of it, so that you can generate more newsletter subscriptions, people following your Kickstarter, all these kind of things. And it's working. I'm getting definitely a bunch of all of those things, which is fascinating. But now I have to also communicate the winners. I have to import them into my MailChimp. So I have those newsletters. I have to then actually physically mail the prizes out. So that's just a constant upkeep. I'm doing something every day on that. I had a nice long meeting with Matt Kint this week, and we first reviewed the cover concerns. And so I posted this on one group on Facebook, an artist discussion group, the two covers, because we had an issue with our front cover. You might have, if you've been watching the series for a while, where there's a gun on the cover, and so now that's an issue. Some people pointed out guns. Some people are just so anti-guns that they won't want that on their shelf. They don't want to even look at the game because it's pro-gun or something like that. And so with that feedback, we had Matt do another one, and the idea we came up with was a grenade, because all these destruction elements in it. And so we put the grenade there with the circle of the pull of the grenade pin being the eye. And Matt and I didn't really like it as much, but we were thinking, well, that's, at least we won't get people that are so anti-gun to say anything about it. But so anyways, I posted the two up, and unanimously everybody preferred the gun version, as do we prefer the gun version from visual perspective. But then I put it out there on the same group saying, okay, but what about this, the fact that it's anti-gun and blah blah blah. And some people said, well, that's that's going to be what it is. It's if you're stuck on this imagery, you're going to have people that are going to not like that. So there was no real solution. And here's the solution I came up with, pitched to Matt. He loved it. I threw it up on that Facebook group, and everyone seems to be okay with this concept. And of course it costs more money, so as do all good solutions. But we're thinking now of adding a slip cover, a sleeve over top of the game, which I know is not necessarily everyone's bag of tea, but I think it solves all our solutions, because if we slide this slip cover on and have it cut out whole, exactly the shape of her happy face side, the nice side of her face, and then the rest of it maybe possibly just black or kind of a redacted look to it. And then we're thinking of doing some UV spot on the other side of the face where it's covered, the destruction side, they're all covered, but we'll put something that makes it look like her face is filled out, but instead it'll all be words like paranoia and confusion and secret agent, all this kind of stuff as words in UV. So it'll be black on black UV, so only in a certain light will you see those words. So I think it'll still, and then Mind Management logo not in black. So I think that might look striking and interesting. And then you slide it out and you're like, wow, that's cool. And at that point, you've got a gun on the cover of your game, but you can hide it if you're opposed to it. Then we reviewed all of the, again, all of the upcoming art needs. And the things we needed most was an eraser. The eraser is the main bad person in the Mind Management series. And so I had this idea for Kickstarter is find the eraser. You have to hunt for the eraser, which is similar to what you're doing in the game. You have to find the eraser, and there's going to be a mission for it, and I'm going to hide the eraser somewhere, and you have to find the eraser. Anyways, I don't want to give away too many clues yet, but I needed art for that, and it's just a one type thing, and I needed that pretty quickly. And Also then all the banners that we need for the Kickstarter and the kind of glory shot of the game set up with all the components, and then we can wait for the rules from a graphic perspective, can wait a little bit. Anyways, just lots to do for the art, and we talked about all that. Also what I'm doing is creating press releases, and I decided to create 2 press releases, one that are for more of the board game sites that I communicated with, so I can like send that out to as many board game sites as I knew that talked about board game stuff, and Board Game Geek used it and posted it as one of their weekly kind of updates from Eric, so that was fantastic. And then I did another press release that is specifically targeting the comic book fans, because this is based on a comic book, and so it really plays up that aspect of it. Whereas in the board game one, I kind of downplayed that and didn't talk about it as much, because I don't want people to be afraid or not interested in the game because they're like, oh, I don't know this IP, this brand, this comic, so I'm not gonna even look at the game, which I've even said myself about some other games. So I just want this game to be, hey, do you like one versus many or hidden movement games? Check it out. And then I was taking those press releases for the comic ones, and I found that really hard to communicate to comic book websites. And so now I'm trying to find out, how do I get a press release to these kind of sites? And that is confusing. I don't have the right answer yet. I've Googled tons, and I'm trying to learn about this, and I've found these places you can go to submit your press release, so that all sorts of journalists go on and search for these through press releases, I guess, and then make news stories out of things. And you can target it to specific industries and whatnot. There isn't a board game specific one, so you have to be kind of weird. I'm like, is it retail gaming, retail toys and games? Is that where I should target, or should I target publishing books? Because the comics, it was very confusing. But then most of them, you have to pay a bunch of money for all these kind of things for them to be able to distribute your press release. And there's some that offer free press release services, but as you can imagine, I can't. Probably not going to get much traffic from those. But I still did them regardless. So we'll see what happens from that. I can't imagine anything bad can come from it, except for the hour or 2 that I wasted on it. Also, on top of that, I'm communicating with reviewers about the. First, I communicated with the new cover. I'm like, hey, here's this new cover. Please use this new cover. And then once I got I kind of did that a little prematurely, because then I got all the feedback from that Facebook thing I talked about earlier. And we're going to stick with the original cover. So then I had to re-communicate back to them like, oh, ignore my previous email. Use the cover you have. Everything's fine. And on top of this, we actually had one reviewer who kept not having a great experience with the game, and I was getting really worried. I'm like, oh my goodness, did I create a bad game? Sen and I'm like, of course not. But it was really frustrating trying to figure out it through multiple plays, and there was very nice communication back and forth, and this didn't work, and this didn't work, and it wasn't until the very final one that I understood what they were doing wrong and incorrectly. And by then they were kind of done with it because they played it so many times incorrectly, and they're going to walk away with a bad taste in their mouth, unfortunately. And it's all due to the fact that I had the rule book is not 100% awesome, or 80%. I don't know how awesome it is. Not that awesome, actually. And so that has led me to then seek out a rules editor and pay a rules editor to go through it to make sure it is top notch. And I would recommend doing that, but earlier, and you should have a final rules edited version of your rule book prior to sending it out to your reviewers, because if they get a rule wrong and play it and don't get the experience you're wanting them to have, that's not good. I've lost one opportunity already, so that's terrible. Fortunately, they were very considerate, and they would send it on to another reviewer, so that was great. I was able to look at my list of reviewers I've had and go to the next one that I was on my list, and was able to create a UPS shipping label online and give that to them so that they could take that, print it out, and send it via UPS. So they're very considerate of them to do that. Now at least a new reviewer will have that game, because again, these samples are pretty darn expensive. Then I'm also, throughout this time, communicating with, I'm currently down to 2 manufacturers that I'm deciding between, but I'm continually asking for more updates of like ideas of stretch goals, and there's a lot of miscommunication because of language. I'm like, what happened to this entry and why is this here? And so there's definitely a lot of back and forth, and I'm a little surprised that we're not 100% solid yet. I know some of it for sure is my fault, because I'm like, oh, I have one more idea. What if we added this and whatnot? But it's definitely a long process, and you should be contacting and connecting with your manufacturer as early as you can in the process. And if you go back into my videos, you'll see how early I started communicating with them. And then part of this is I'm also trying to figure out at this time what are the stretch goals and what order they should come in, and try to dog ear bookmark a value of what I think they should be at, knowing that I have some flexibility to make the gaps wider or thinner depending on how fast the Kickstarter campaign is moving. So you don't want to blow through all of them in the first day if you have a gonzo crazy awesome campaign, but you don't, I really want to hit as many of these stretch goals as possible, because each of them are like, oh, this is awesome. Oh, this is cool too. Oh, this will make the game better. So I might have to make the goals a little tighter still within my budget but I think I might make that an entire episode in the future. So we'll go through that. Also, within the last week, I've played the game 13 times, the actual game 13 times, because I wanted to play through the entire shift system packages. So the game comes with multiple shift system packages. It actually comes with 10, and 5 for the management side and 5 for the agents, rather the rogue agent side. And when you lose the game, you get to open a package and you get more contents. And so I wanted to play it through one more time, because it has been a while since I've actually experienced it all, and there has been a few tweaks here and there to some other minor rules about how certain characters do some of their abilities. So I'm like, let's play test the whole thing again. And so I did, and found a few nice little minor things of tweaking, which is great. So that's fantastic that this happened. And was also great because I was able to play for the first time with my sample unit, so it all looked very pretty and awesome. So but that also informed me on some minor art changes to keep track of, that I don't want to inundate Matt Kint with right now, because he's other focuses and priorities right now. But when it gets to this, I've been making a list of all the minor, one time there's a yellow layer on a card that I see that is in front of a text layer on one card, but it's behind on another, and I can tell that. So these kind of small little things that I'm catching because I'm now using it and playing with it. I think that's a big tip for publishers, is to make sure you're playing your game with the sample unit you have a lot, so that you get a sense of how it all fits together, and if any of the art is not functioning the way that it needs to. I also hired an animator that is going to be working on the Kickstarter video. I think I talked about that in a previous one, I'm not sure. So we completed the script, and then we heard the voiceover that the animator handled all of that kind of stuff, and he gave me options of different voiceover artists to use with some samples, reviewing those, picked one, then got to hear it and gave feedback on it, and then making sure that the script was concise but had enough room to show some demos of how the game worked, because that's I really wanted. I don't want it to be a fluffy "here's the world of man management" video, because people just tune out of those kind of things. I think I want a little bit of that, but I want to make sure there's enough gameplay examples and how it works in there as well. I'm also, in this last week, and a week before that, been trying to set up a lot of interviews with media. I want to make sure that people know, like people with blogs and podcasts, have an opportunity to maybe interview me, Matt, or Sen, in the weeks coming and throughout the campaign, so that the news is getting out there. So I'm trying to connect with as many sites as I can for doing that. And I actually started recently the Kickstarter page, and started the preview page is up. That's awesome. I'll put the link in the video below if you haven't seen it. There's nothing to it. It just says notify me when launch, but click that. And then I'm starting to write the text, so no graphics yet, of how that will flow. And then Matt's working on all the graphics that go in between. And that's kind of what I've been doing in the last week, maybe 2 weeks max, because it's been a while since I had a video, and the reason is because other things happen when you have a life. It's not that I get to work on being a publisher 24 hours a day, even though sometimes it feels like it. Not that anyone cares all the specifics, but I have twin boys that are actually tomorrow turning 3, and that's a handful. And we had a nanny that takes care of him throughout the day, but she just called in with a 3-week sick leave request, as of the next day. So we're scrambling, trying to find people to help out cover, and sometimes it's me that has to cover, so that's time I'm losing being able to take care of this business. And then today my car breaks down on the road, and I had the boys in there, and this temporary nanny that came. They had to take a bus home, and I had to get my car towed. I still don't have my car. And then tomorrow my wife is flying to a city for a business trip for the weekend, so I'm home alone with the boys, which is fine. But now it's like just less and less time to be focused on the business. So it just, all of this has to get done, and life doesn't stop on as as you're trying to get this stuff done. So, not trying to say all this to scare anybody or to say that this is impossible. I'm enjoying the heck out of it. It's really fun. It's you have to have a certain amount of organizational skill to kind of keep all of these things in the air and not drop them. You have to have some system. I use spreadsheets, Google spreadsheets, a lot to keep track of what's going on, and I use the Google Keep, which is basic to-do list that just everything that's on that list is the things I have to get done. It's not the most elegant to-do list, but it works for me, and I've tried so many other to-do lists and they're just way more complicated. I like it because I have a Google Android phone, and it's sitting right there on my phone as a big to-do list, and I can access it on my phone super quick without having to go into an app even. It's right there on my phone, so that's why I use it. And that's what I've been doing. So now I got to go back and I just got to go back and do more stuff. So I'm busy, you're busy, we're all busy. Thank you so much for watching this week, and have a good one.